Hello, you're on the Overhead Story channel. Let's go.
I wasn't supposed to be home early that day. That might be the part that stuck with me most, how everything unraveled from one tiny shift in routine. One of my clients had canceled a restoration job. Old 1965 Triumph Bonneville, custom chrome work, nothing out of the ordinary. Said he had a family emergency, asked to reschedule. I remember thinking, great, an unexpected free evening. I planned to stop for coffee, maybe hit the hardware store, then head home and just zone out for a while. Just me, the couch, and an old black and white film. Simple, predictable, but life doesn't wait for your plans. The moment I stepped through the front door, something felt wrong. Not in an obvious way, the kind of wrong you feel in your chest before your brain catches up. A quiet alarm. A shift in air pressure. Something in the house didn't belong. First, the scent. There was cologne hanging in the air. Sharp. Not overpowering, but fresh. New. It wasn't mine. I haven't worn cologne since our wedding anniversary 3 years ago, and even then it was more out of formality than habit. This one was stronger. Synthetic. Musky with a citrus finish. A brand I couldn't place, but one I would have remembered if it had ever passed through this house before. It lingered like the ghost of someone trying not to be noticed. I closed the door gently behind me, footsteps cautious. My keys didn't jingle when I set them down. Even the sound of the latch clicking felt louder than usual. On the couch lay a jacket. Black, trim cut, a men's blazer. Expensive, the kind with stitching that disappears into the seams and buttons that aren't plastic. Definitely not mine. Definitely not thrifted. I walked toward it like it might jump. Ran a finger along the collar. The fabric was still warm. Not room temperature, warm. I called out, careful not to sound suspicious. Emily? No answer. Only silence. Not even music in the background, which was strange. She always had something playing when she was home alone. Podcasts, classical playlists, that weird lo-fi stuff she said helped her focus. But now? Nothing. The bathroom door was slightly ajar. I nudged it open and stepped inside. The mirror above the sink was still fogged around the edges. A towel, one of the white ones we keep rolled up for guests, hung sloppily over the rod. It was damp. No steam in the air anymore, but the room still held that freshly showered humidity. There were 2 toothbrushes in the holder, but I only recognized one. Now my heart was doing something weird, like my body was picking up on a truth my mind hadn't quite acknowledged yet. In the kitchen, I found a coffee cup sitting alone on the table, right next to the bowl of oranges I'd bought 2 days earlier. Simple white ceramic. One of the good ones we only brought out for guests. Inside it was half a serving of dark roast, still lukewarm. But what caught my eye was the lipstick stain on the rim. Soft pink. Not Emily's shade. She always wore deep berry reds. Always. I stared at it too long, trying to make it make sense. Maybe she changed brands. Maybe she switched things up. Maybe a friend dropped by. But then why didn't she mention it? I turned to look out the front window, just in time to catch a sleek black sedan pulling away from the curb. It was quiet, tinted, and unfamiliar. I didn't catch the plates, but I didn't have to. It was the timing that mattered. 2 seconds later, I heard the soft click of the bedroom door. Emily emerged, freshly dressed, hair perfect, smile tight but warm, as if nothing unusual had happened at all. "Oh, hey," she said, brushing an invisible speck of lint from her blouse. "Didn't know you'd be home this early." I tried to keep my face neutral. "Yeah, job fell through." She nodded. No pause, no hesitation. "Ah, well, it's probably for the best. You've been working like crazy lately." She walked over, gave me a quick peck on the cheek. Her skin was cool, not freshly showered, but her hair still held the soft steam waver that only comes from a dryer or, more likely, humidity. She smelled like her usual perfume, but stronger, as if she'd reapplied recently. I noticed the faintest shimmer along her jawline, the kind left behind by hasty makeup removal. Then, almost casually, she glanced toward the living room. "Oh," she added, her tone brightening. "You might have noticed the jacket on the couch." The electrician stopped by. Random inspection. They're checking old junction boxes in the neighborhood. He said our breaker panel's outdated. I blinked. The electrician? Yeah. I didn't have time to text you. He just showed up. Said it'd only take a minute. And the shower? She laughed a little too easily. Ugh, I got sweaty helping him move the cabinet. Didn't want to sit around in sticky clothes? I forced a smile. Huh. Weird timing. Tell me about it. She breezed past me then, grabbing her purse from the counter. Oh. Almost forgot, there's that corporate party tonight. I mentioned it last week, remember? It's formalish, so I need to leave early to beat traffic. I won't be out too late, though. I just nodded. My brain was too busy sorting through puzzle pieces she didn't know she'd dropped. She kissed me again, said something cheerful about wine spritzers and awkward small talk, and then she was gone, out the door in a flash of heels and perfume like nothing had happened at all. And for a minute I almost let myself believe it. Almost. But as the door clicked shut, I turned back to the coffee cup. The lipstick smear glinted faintly in the late afternoon sun. Something had happened here. I didn't know what yet, but I knew enough to know what it wasn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the fridge downstairs and the occasional creak of the house settling, but mostly I was listening to the noise in my head. It wasn't just about today. That was the tipping point, yeah, but as I lay there, memories started bubbling up. Moments I'd brushed off. Words that hadn't made sense at the time. Expressions I hadn't questioned. All of it started to feel deliberate. Like a trail of breadcrumbs I'd ignored until now. The first thing I remembered was the password. Emily had changed it on her phone back in March. We were sitting on the couch, I remember, because we were eating takeout from that Thai place she liked, the one with the bamboo chairs that always creaked. Her phone buzzed. She picked it up and typed in a code I didn't recognize. I asked about it, teasing at first, what happened to your birthday password? But she just smiled and said, company policy. We're supposed to update passwords every 3 months. I'd believed her. She was in marketing, after all. They dealt with a lot of client data. Made sense. And it wasn't like I had ever snooped. We trusted each other. Or at least, I thought we did. Then there were the late nights. I'd always supported her ambition. She wanted to move up at the firm, and I was all in. When the meetings got more frequent, I didn't complain. When she said her team was working toward a big client pitch and needed to pull late hours, I brought her food from her favorite salad bar. I was that guy, the supportive husband. The one who didn't ask too many questions. The one who assumed good intentions. But then the little things started creeping in. She'd come home and head straight for the shower every time. Sometimes she'd already showered before leaving that morning. Still, I didn't think much of it. Just stress, I told myself. Maybe she was decompressing. Except she started wearing perfume again, late at night. She'd dab it on before, just running to the store or meeting a colleague for a quick coffee to brainstorm. It wasn't even her usual perfume. It was newer, sharper. I once asked her if she changed brands and she shrugged, said her coworker had given her a sample. Figured I'd try it, she said. That sample sure lasted a long time. Another time, I noticed the back seat of her car smelled distinctly like cologne. Not hers and definitely not mine. I remember leaning in to grab the grocery bags and just stopping mid-reach, inhaling that artificial scent. Like something from a hotel lobby or a men's fragrance ad. When I asked about it, she said her coworker had ridden with her after a client lunch. Her husband must have been wearing a new body spray, she said with a grin. It lingered. Weird, right? At the time, it sounded logical. Now, it sounded rehearsed. But the moment that really started it for me, the one I should have paid attention to sooner, was the restaurant receipt. It was late spring, maybe April. I had borrowed Emily's car while mine was in the shop. I opened the glove compartment to grab the registration info, and there it was, a folded paper from Maison 32, one of those trendy upscale spots downtown. Not the kind of place either of us visited without the other. Not unless it was for work. 2 entrees. A bottle of wine. Filet mignon. Cheesecake. A fancy dinner for 2. I'd asked her about it, feeling stupid for even questioning it. Oh, that, she'd said, laughing like it was nothing. That was from a client lunch. You know Melanie, right? She's vegetarian. She ordered the truffle risotto. I had the steak. I forgot to expense it. Should probably dig that up. I believed her. I wanted to believe her so badly. But here's the thing. I remember her telling me that same week that she'd been slammed at the office all day. She mentioned microwaving soup for lunch. She even texted me, don't wait up, still at the office. No mention of Maison 32. No client lunch. And Melanie, I'd met her once at a work barbecue. She specifically said she didn't drink. Migraines, she'd said. Can't even smell wine without feeling sick. So who was the second glass for? Why the lie? Why tell me she was buried in spreadsheets when she was dining on filet mignon? After that I started paying more attention. Not like a detective, not at first, but just more present. I watched. I listened. I noticed. She flinched when I walked into a room unexpectedly. She'd tilt her phone screen away when I sat beside her. When I asked how her day had gone, her answers got shorter, vaguer, busy, fine, nothing new. I really tried to bring it up. We were doing laundry together, folding sheets. I asked if she felt like we'd been distant. She didn't look up. Not really, she said. We've both been busy. It's just a phase. Just a phase. That night, she slept facing the wall. One time I came home and she was already asleep on the couch, phone clutched in her hand. I gently moved it to the side to cover her with a blanket. The screen lit up as I shifted it, not enough to read the name, but enough to see a heart emoji in the preview text. I didn't ask. I should have. It was like walking a tightrope over a canyon I didn't want to see the bottom of. I kept hoping I was wrong. That it was all just my paranoia. That maybe we were just drifting because life got in the way, because marriages go through seasons, because no relationship is perfect. But every instinct in my body screamed otherwise. And what got to me most was how good she was at pretending. The casual affection. The light kisses. The offhand jokes. The way she'd still ask if I wanted anything from the grocery store. Like nothing had changed. Like she was still my wife and I was still her husband and we were still building the life we dreamed of on our wedding day. But she had changed. And I couldn't keep pretending I didn't notice. So I started logging it all, quietly, mentally. Date. Time. Excuse. Behavior. Not because I wanted to accuse her. Not because I wanted to catch her in a lie. But because I needed to know I wasn't losing my mind. She had taken something from me, not just trust, not just an asterisk Macy, but that quiet certainty I used to carry, the one that let me walk through life knowing someone had my back. Now, I couldn't even walk through my own home without wondering what I might find. The woman I loved was right in front of me, smiling, cooking dinner, watching reruns, but it felt like she'd already left. And I was the only one who hadn't caught up yet. By the time the company party rolled around, I wasn't guessing anymore. I didn't have concrete proof, no photos, no confessions, but my gut wasn't confused. It was locked in. And when your gut's screaming loud enough, the question isn't if something's going on. It's when you'll see it for yourself. And I planned to. Emily mentioned the event offhandedly, almost like she was hoping I'd forget. Just a boring networking thing, she said over coffee one morning. You really wouldn't want to be there, all shop talk and budget reports. She said it too casually. Didn't even look up from her phone. But I already knew the venue. The hotel downtown. She'd left the invitation on the counter weeks ago. I remembered the logo. What she didn't realize was that I'd made a mental note of the date. Just in case. And I'd made a few quiet calls. Turns out spouses were allowed. Encouraged even. Funny how she never mentioned that part. So I made a plan. Not to cause a scene, I wasn't looking for drama. I just wanted the truth in the open. I wanted her to see that I saw it. I wanted him to see me too, whoever he was. But I didn't show up alone. I called Cynthia. She was an old friend, not an ex, not a flirtation, nothing messy. We'd worked on a local charity event together a few years back and kept in touch occasionally. She was kind, grounded, and without trying to be stunning. When I told her the situation, she didn't hesitate. Say no more, she said. I'll be there. You don't need to go through this by yourself. That night, she arrived right on time. Elegant in navy blue, not flashy, just effortless. She didn't ask me for details. She just gave me a soft look and said, let's get this over with. The hotel ballroom was already buzzing when we arrived. Light jazz playing overhead, waiters weaving through the crowd with tiny appetizers on silver trays. People laughed too loudly at half-funny jokes. The usual corporate performance. I scanned the room quickly. And there she was. Emily. Across the ballroom, near the bar. Laughing. Tilted slightly inward toward a man who was far too close for professional conversation. Her hand rested on his arm, not resting, really. Clinging. Like she forgot where she was. He was tall. Trim suit. Salt and pepper hair, thick and well-styled. He leaned in to say something and she tilted her head back, laughing that perfect laugh she used to save for our dates. The one that used to feel private. I stopped walking. Cynthia did too, catching on fast. Is that him? She asked quietly. I didn't answer. Because I knew him. His name was Robert Myers. Executive VP of Strategic Accounts. I'd heard her mention him a few times in passing. Robert needs this proposal turned around by Tuesday, or Robert's flying in from Chicago for the board meeting. She always said his name with this light edge in her voice. Professional, but not flat. I'd even seen him once months ago. At the company picnic. He shook my hand politely. Too politely. Like he was performing respect, not offering it. And the car, the black sedan I saw pulling away from our house the day of the cologne, the coffee cup, the blazer, it was his. I took a breath. Looked straight at Emily. She hadn't seen me yet. So we walked, slow and deliberate, through the crowd, Cynthia at my side like some kind of graceful avenger. People turned to glance at us, nodding, smiling, not out of recognition, but out of that social instinct to acknowledge presence. Then Emily looked up. And froze. Her smile dropped mid-laugh. Her eyes widened just a touch, not cartoonishly, just enough to tell me everything. Her body didn't move, but her hand slipped off Robert's arm so subtly I might have missed it if I weren't watching. She didn't wave. She didn't call out. She didn't even blink. Robert noticed something change and turned slightly, following her gaze. His expression shifted from casual charm to guarded curiosity. I didn't stop walking until we were near enough that she had to say something. "Mark," she said, voice light, brittle. "I didn't know you were coming." Her tone was almost convincing, but I knew her well enough to hear the crack beneath the polish. I gave a small smile, one that didn't reach my eyes. "Corporate party," I said. "Thought it'd be good to finally see what you've been working so hard on." She nodded slowly. "Of course. This is Cynthia?" "Old friend," I said, without elaborating. Robert extended a hand. "Robert Myers. I work with Emily." I shook his hand. Firm. No emotion. "Yeah," I said. "I've heard a lot about you." He smiled, something tight behind his eyes. "All good, I hope." "Not everything," I said, calm and cool. A silence hung between us. Emily looked down at her wine glass like she was trying to disappear into it. Then Cynthia, bless her, broke the tension with a polite smile. "Well, I'm going to find us some drinks." "Mark, red or white?" "Red," I said. "Thanks." She disappeared into the crowd. And I turned to Emily. "Can we talk?" She hesitated, I starting to Robert. "It's not what you think," she said quickly. I raised an eyebrow. "I haven't said what I think yet." She didn't answer. I stepped back, giving her space. "Don't worry. I'm not here to ruin your night. I just wanted to see it with my own eyes." "Mark," she started. But I'd already turned. I didn't need a confrontation. I didn't need her excuses. I just needed her to know the performance was over. Cynthia returned with 2 glasses of wine, handing one to me. "Want to stay?" she asked, casual. I shook my head. "I've seen enough." We walked out without looking back. The cold night air outside felt cleaner somehow, like I could breathe again. Cynthia didn't say anything until we reached the car. "I'm proud of you," she said. "That took guts." I didn't respond right away. I just stared out at the lights reflecting off the wet pavement. I didn't feel strong. I felt gutted. But I also felt awake. That moment, the look on Emily's face, the shift in her eyes, the complete and utter stillness in her expression when she realized she'd been seen, it was all the confirmation I'd ever need. You can spend weeks, months, even years gaslighting yourself, questioning, doubting, convincing yourself you're imagining things. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. The mask slips. And you stop being the fool in the story. You start being the one who writes the ending. I didn't sleep much that night. After we left the hotel, Cynthia dropped me off, gave my shoulder a squeeze, and said she was proud of me again. It was the kind of thing that should have felt like comfort. Instead, I just nodded. I stood in the driveway for a long time after she pulled away, watching the condensation settle on my car's windshield. The house behind me didn't feel like home. It felt like a museum of good intentions, one I no longer had the stomach to walk through. I sat in the kitchen with the lights off. Didn't even take off my jacket. Just sat there, phone in hand, wondering how far back it all really went. How many nights had I been asleep while she whispered to someone else? How many dinners had we shared while she texted him under the table? At some point, I must have drifted off because I woke to the sound of a message alert. Then another. And another. People had seen the photos. I hadn't even known any were taken. I certainly didn't post anything. But someone had. Multiple people, actually. There was a company photographer at the event. A few coworkers. The usual scattered selfies and team pics. And in the middle of all that, Emily and Robert caught in what looked like a private moment, only it wasn't private anymore. The first image I saw was grainy but clear enough, her hand resting lightly on his chest, his head bent toward hers, both of them laughing. Too close. Too in asterisk, mate. Not the kind of body language you see between colleagues at a corporate event. Not unless something else is going on. Another photo had them standing near the bar. Her hand on the back of his neck. His hand low on her waist. Not touching, but close enough that it didn't matter. It was all public now. A coworker I barely knew sent me a message. "Hey, man. I didn't know how to say this, but I saw what happened last night. Just know you didn't deserve that." Another read. "You don't know me well, but I always thought something was going on between them. A lot of us did. We just didn't know how to bring it up without overstepping. It was surreal. All these pieces of a puzzle I didn't even ask for suddenly landing in my lap. No more theories. No more maybe or what if. Just confirmation. And fallout." By noon, it was more than just whispers. Emily's company was in full damage control mode. The internal comms team had pulled down the event gallery, but it was too late. **TS were already circulating. The images had reached the upper floors of the corporate hierarchy, not because of morality, but because of liability. She wasn't just someone's wife anymore. She was someone with a reputation linked to a man high enough on the ladder to make HR nervous. At 12:43 p.m., she texted me. "We need to talk." I ignored it. 10 minutes later. "Please. I didn't mean for this to happen. You weren't supposed to see it like that." That part made me laugh. I actually laughed out loud. You weren't supposed to see it like that. Like it was a lighting issue. Like I'd misread a bad camera angle. Not the full exposure of months' worth of betrayal. By 1 p.m., she was called into the corporate office. I know that because her sister called me of all people. She sounded shaken. Said Emily was upset and in shock. I asked if she knew what had happened. She didn't answer at first. Then she sighed and said, "I've heard things." I didn't want to believe them. At 3:25 p.m., Emily called. I let it ring. At 3:26 p.m., she texted again. "I'm going to my sister's for a while. I need space to think. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know it wasn't just some fling. It was complicated." Complicated. That word. As if betrayal had layers, and if I just understood the nuance, it'd all make sense. As if emotional wreckage was a thesis paper, not a blunt force trauma. At 6:40 p.m., she left. I watched her pack from the hallway. Not that she said much. A small suitcase. A coat. Her laptop. No apologies. No explanations. Just the mechanical act of retreat. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She looked hollow. Like the version of her I knew had already died somewhere along the way. And all that remained was a stranger I couldn't even hate properly. I didn't stop her. Didn't ask where she was going. Didn't ask when she'd be back. I just let her walk out the front door and into the night. And when it closed behind her, I realized something strange. I didn't feel broken. I felt quiet. Not peaceful. Not yet. But the noise was finally receding. The confusion, the doubt, the back and forth. All of it had been silenced in that moment. There was nothing left to argue. The curtain had been lifted, and the show was over. The next day, her company released a vague internal memo. I didn't see it directly, but someone forwarded me a copy. Said it was about preserving professionalism and addressing interpersonal conduct at formal events. No names, but the implication was clear. Robert was suspended pending a review. And Emily? She was relocated. A logistical reassignment to another regional office across the country. The kind of move that comes with a polite face and a firm push. They didn't fire her, but they removed her. Quietly, strategically, like she was a risk that needed to be managed. I got more messages that day. From people who knew her, people who worked with her, friends who had been on the sidelines, unsure what to say. One in particular stood out. A former coworker of hers wrote, "I always thought you two were rock solid. I'm sorry this happened. I think Emily got lost trying to prove something to herself, maybe. I wish she'd realized what she had before it was too late." That one hit harder than I expected. Not because I thought she had something special, but because she had something stable. And maybe that's what made her run. People don't always cheat because they're unhappy. Sometimes they cheat because they don't know how to be content. Because peace feels boring when your life's been built on chasing validation. Because attention can start to feel like oxygen when you forget how to breathe without it. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being the oxygen. I became the mirror. The person who saw her for what she was, flaws and all, and loved her anyway. And for some people, that kind of love becomes unbearable. Because they can't live up to it. They don't want to. They want the performance, the flattery, the illusion. and I was done playing a supporting role in her theater. By the end of the week, I boxed up everything that reminded me of her. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Photos, cards, souvenirs from trips we once took. I didn't throw them away, just stored them, like artifacts of a life that didn't exist anymore. A museum exhibit titled Before I Knew Better. She didn't try to come back. Not physically, but she left a trail of digital noise behind. Texts, emails, even a long message on Facebook disguised as an open letter. Apologies layered with excuses. Explanations wrapped in vagueness. I didn't respond, because what was there to say? What do you say to someone who set fire to their own house and wants sympathy for the smoke in their eyes? All I wanted, maybe all I ever wanted, was clarity. And now, finally, I had it. 3 days after Emily left, I came home to a manila envelope resting on my porch. No return address. No note. Just my name scrawled across the front in neat handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a printed report. Old school, stapled, page-numbered, highlighted in red ink. I flipped through it slowly, not really sure what I was looking at. Timestamps, names, *TS of text messages, email excerpts, some photos grainy but sharp enough to make out faces. Robert was in a few of them, but he wasn't alone. There were others, 2 others at least. One was a name I vaguely recognized, a client from a branding seminar Emily had attended last year in San Diego. I remember her mentioning him once in passing. Harmless flirt, she'd said with a laugh. Old enough to be my dad. He was married. The messages between them told a different story. There was another man too, someone from New York apparently, a visiting speaker at a leadership conference she helped organize. That one was slick. Dozens of texts, flirty, poetic, too polished to be accidental, and every message painted a pattern. The same language repeated itself like a script she recycled and tweaked depending on the audience. It's complicated. I feel trapped sometimes, but I still love him. You make me feel seen. Always the same lines, as if she needed to justify herself. Not to them, but to herself. I flipped to the last page and found a note tucked between the staples. Just one line. Thought you deserved the whole truth. See, Cynthia. Of course. I called her that evening. I didn't know what I was going to say, but she picked up on the second ring. You got it? She asked, no small talk. Yeah, I said. My voice felt like gravel in my throat. How did you even? I didn't go digging, she said. But I have friends. Someone in Emily's office owed me a favor. I asked. They answered. I didn't know what to say to that. She didn't just mess up once, Cynthia continued, voice soft now. You need to understand that. This wasn't a slip. It was a pattern. You're not crazy. You're not to blame. This is who she's been. Maybe for longer than you even realized. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the packet in my lap. Why didn't I see it? I asked, mostly to myself. Cynthia sighed. Because you were married to the version of her you fell in love with. And you wanted to believe that version still existed. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But instead, I just felt this dull thud in my chest. Like something final had clicked into place. Not heartbreak. Not anger. Just clarity. And grief. Not for her. For the life I thought we had. Later that night, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in over a year. Emily's father, Robert Stanton, retired school principal. The kind of man who wore khakis to mow the lawn. We'd always had a solid, if slightly formal relationship. Mark, he said, voice low. I just heard what happened. I didn't answer. I'm sorry, he continued. Really, if I'm honest. I'm not surprised, but I'm sorry. That caught me off guard. You're not surprised? He sighed heavily. I love my daughter, but she's always been restless. Never stayed in one lane too long. School, jobs, friends, relationships. She gets this itch when things get too steady. I thought she'd outgrown it. I wanted to believe she had, especially with you. There was a long pause. She's not proud of what she did, he added. But she's also not ready to take responsibility. That's always been her weakness. I didn't know how to respond to that. What do you say when the father of your wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, basically confirms everything you've been afraid of? I just wanted you to know, he said, that none of this was your fault, and that I still think the world of you. After he hung up, I sat there in the dark, the phone still pressed to my ear even though the call had ended. I think that was the moment it really hit me. Not just the end of my marriage, but the end of something bigger. I hadn't just lost a partner. I'd lost an entire version of the future. Her family had felt like mine. Her world had been wrapped up in mine. We'd shared holidays, traditions, routines. And now, all of that was ash. I wasn't just grieving her. I was grieving everything I thought I'd built. Over the next few days, I moved through life in a haze. I went to work. I sanded down a gas tank for a '79 Honda CB750. I tuned the carburetor on a Royal Enfield someone brought in from out of state. I answered emails. I returned calls. But my hands felt heavier, my thoughts slower, like I was wading through cement. I kept thinking back to the early days of our relationship. Not out of nostalgia, but confusion. How did we go from Sunday pancakes and slow dances in the kitchen to this? Had she always been like this? Had there been signs I missed? I thought about the night I proposed. How her hands had shaken when I slipped the ring on. I thought it was nerves. Maybe it was doubt. I thought about our honeymoon in Charleston. How she had disappeared for an hour at a boutique shop while I waited in a cafe across the street. She came back glowing. Said she'd just lost track of time. But when I asked what she bought, she said, "Oh, nothing really," then quickly changed the subject. So many moments like that scattered like red flags I'd folded into origami just to keep the peace. I started looking at everything differently, our photos, her texts, even the playlist we made together on Spotify. Songs that once made me smile now felt like background music to a story I hadn't realized I was only half part of. And through it all, one question kept pressing at the back of my mind like a splinter I couldn't dig out. Who was she really? Because the Emily I'd known, or thought I'd known, was warm, witty, ambitious. A little impatient, sure. A little stubborn. But she'd once cried watching a dog food commercial. She used to leave little notes in my lunch. She called me captain when I was stressed, like she thought I could steer through anything. Had that all been real? Or just a version of her that existed when I was convenient, before the shine wore off, before the excitement faded? I didn't have an answer, but I stopped looking for one. I realized that the closure I thought I needed, the explanation, the apology, the grand confession, none of that was coming. And even if it did, it wouldn't be enough. Some damage doesn't reverse. Some truths don't need to be explained. They just need to be accepted. So I folded Cynthia's file back into the envelope, taped it shut, and slid it into the bottom drawer of my desk. Not to forget it, but to leave it where it belonged, in the past. The next morning, I took the first real breath I'd taken in weeks. It didn't fix everything, but it felt like the beginning of something new. Not healing. Not yet. But something. And that was enough. I didn't explode. I calculated. Emily and Robert underestimated that. The company fired him quietly, damage control, reputation management. Emily? Relocated. A corporate exile in disguise. I received a discreet settlement offer, a thinly veiled bribe to stay quiet. I declined. Instead, I sent a polite message to the board, "Thank you for handling this swiftly." Then I filed for divorce. Publicly. Legally. Deliberately. She called, first defensive, then sorry, then tearful. I ignored every message. There was nothing left to say. I didn't need to know why she did it. I already knew. What mattered more was why I stayed as long as I did. That question cut deeper. But I was answering it now, by leaving, by choosing myself, by drawing a line I should have drawn long ago. Weeks passed. The silence grew, but this time it felt like peace. I returned to my garage, working on an old Indian motorcycle. No secrets in steel and grease. Cynthia visited sometimes, no pressure, just presence. Trust grew, slow and honest. One evening she stayed for dinner. We laughed. It felt simple. Real. Emily sent a long letter full of regret, apologies, memories. I didn't reply. I didn't need closure. She'd already given it to me the moment she walked out. I hadn't just lost a wife, I'd lost an illusion. But I'd found something better in return, clarity, space, and the sound of my own life again. And for once, I wasn't afraid of the quiet. I welcomed it.